Hi, Chums. You know, a couple of days ago, I mentioned the fact that we should talk about some of the famous people that you'd met, not just me, you see, because obviously on this channel, it's a friendship group. You know, we're chums, we have to get together, talk about the people that we've met. And I was just so surprised when I said, did you ever, you know, because this is the thing, isn't it, for our generation when you think about it. I said, did you ever sort of like meet your favourite star, get an autograph, or you know, go somewhere that suddenly you're next to them and you think, wow, you know, and I think we've all done that. I mean, I was lucky, you know, I grew up in a showbiz world, all thanks to my brilliant mother and father and grandfather, Phil, a brilliant piano player, and of course some wonderful grandparents who were just, you know, stalwarts of the stage. May and Con, brilliant people. And of course that comes through in your legacy, doesn't it, you know? So you're not as necessarily, how should I put this nicely, inspired by famous people because you see the reality of them, you know what I mean? Like, you see their fears, their worries about the box office, whether they'll still be popular. Will you sell that record? You know, that sort of stuff. When you get close to celebrities, it's sometimes not the best. So I think the people that have, you know, contacted into the channel, you've got some terrific memories, some tremendous fun. And I just wanted to share one or two with you and let me know if you like this sort of thing, you know. If you want to get involved, maybe we could have more conversations about other things that you and I have both done. Then we get to know each other a little bit better, don't we? I mean, that's the whole point. Got to start off though with what this always gets your attention, doesn't it? Oh, listen up, chums. You see, Mario, this is at Mario, QI3Y, sorry, get that right, get your teeth in, Neil, at Mario, QI3YW, basically said, good day, Neil, you're my favourite channel. Well, Mario, you're my favourite people, so makes two of us, doesn't it? You know, so let's kick off with a star, in fact, that a lot of people may have forgotten in today's generation, but really was absolutely huge on their time. I believe this is pronounced right, Canaveran. Basically, they wrote, I don't know if you're a man or a woman, sorry there's no picture there, but do let me know. They said the first person I saw live at Great Yarmouth in the 60s was Billy Fury. Billy Fury, eh? Britain's answer to Elvis Presley. What a face, what a voice, what a look. I met him very briefly actually towards the end of his life. And I've got to be honest, chums, I didn't know that it was Billy Fury because it's the imagery, isn't it? You know, we've often said this on the show. It's like the way they look in that publicity picture is the thing that you remember. And of course, he was a lot older then, slightly greyer and not very well at that moment in time, but a terrific performer. I'm guessing that you probably saw him because I also know the singing group, The Bachelors, terrific set of pipes on those boys, right? Wonderful guys. Who remembers their hits, yeah? Now, what was interesting was, I think at the time you may have seen him, would have been around the time he was making a movie called I've Got a Horse, which was filmed in Great Yarmouth during his summer season there. And what was interesting was his manager, Larry Parnes, made sure that he made the movie in Great Yarmouth and then also doubled up by doing twice nightly in Variety at the local theatre. Double the money, double the sort of percentage for the manager, right? Do let me know if that was the case. Was that during the movie of that? There's some wonderful footage of that, by the way, chums, online. And it just shows what a carefree attitude we all had back then, you know, in that era, because, you know, obviously I wasn't born at that point, I've got to be honest, but everybody just looked happier. They were living in the moment. There was a lot of expectation. And can you imagine being able to see the superstar of your choice literally while you're on your summer holidays? Terrific. So thank you so much for that. Billy Fury, as ever, check him out. Lucky enough to work with another guy, brilliant man, called Joe Brown, who played on Billy's first big solo album as well. Terrific performer, Joe Brown. Joe Brown and the Brothers, who remembers them? At Jane Rochester, my husband and I went to see Johnny Mathis live. It was amazing because we were both so young and had fallen in love to his album. He put on a wonderful show without any of the artificial enhancements of today. We still love his music after 54 years together. What a lovely story. What's the magic secret to that, more importantly, right? You know what I'm saying? Johnny Mathis, met him. Yes, terrific performer. Now, he used to actually perform at a local club near me in Yorkshire called the Batley Variety Club, right? And what was interesting there was, you know, he could have stayed in all the fancy hotels and stuff, but he actually stayed with a woman, and I was working sort of as a Saturday person in this store, and she was the manageress, and her husband was the lighting man of that club. You see how this works? Johnny Mathis stayed there with them. Some might say to save money. I think he just liked the company. You know, she was a nice, warm person. He was very good at his job. There was lots of things attached to that, you know what I'm saying? So it's fascinating, isn't it, when you look at that, Johnny Mathis. And then many years later, I was interviewing Nile Rodgers from Chic, you know, the dance band Chic from the 80s. And he told me that they produced an album for Johnny Mathis, which at that time had never been released because his record label, I think it was Columbia, didn't think it suited the remit of the style, because we don't know, you know, Johnny Mathis was kind of like a terrific performer, but it was things like Misty, wasn't it? And I liked, I don't know about you, Too Much, Too Little, Too Late and Gone, Gone, Gone. Do you remember that, the disco track? I thought that was terrific, really did. Yeah, Johnny Mathis, what a memory. Have you got any memories of Johnny? He's still performing today, you know, and I think he still does a wonderful job. He's one of those people, actually, he's sort of never been given the recognition, in my opinion, that I think he should have had. But, you know, that's show business, as they often say, isn't it? That's the problem, you know. But thank you for that, Jane. Really enjoyed that memory, yeah. And as I say, there's some tracks from the Chic album on YouTube. Big mistake. It could have sent Johnny's career into a totally different stratosphere if they'd have got it together. But, you know, hey ho. Now, Home Africa 85625 tells me, hi Neil and everyone, I met Ian Gillan from Black Sabbath way back in 1974. Mr. Gillan was playing Jesus Christ in Jesus Christ Superstar in Pretoria in South Africa. He popped up to visit his farming parents and visited many more. Wow, you know, that's a great story, isn't it? You know, because I never would have, you see, this is the beauty of this channel. I never would have had him down appearing in a musical like Jesus Christ Superstar. But of course it makes sense. As many of the chums know, I recently interviewed Sir Tim Rice, know Andrew Lloyd Webber well. And when I think about it now, you know, because Tim Rice was talking about how, you know, when they first put it out with Robert Stigwood, I mean, you'll see it more in the interview when I've put it together, but what it was interesting was it was more of a rock opera. It wasn't really a musical, you know. But Ian Gillan, yeah, now who remembers Black Sabbath? Oh, they were the bad boys of rock, weren't they? There were so many in that era, weren't they? That's the problem. Lovely, terrific memory. So thank you so much from South Africa. Yeah, you do learn stuff every day, don't you? What do you mean you're turning off? You've learned enough. At CA-TX2, they tell me, hi Neil, I had the wonderful chance to see Liberace in concert when I was about 14 years old. What a showman, what a glorious show he put on. I didn't get to meet him personally, but he did lean down and get some audience members to sing along with him. Well, CA, that would be good enough for me. I mean, absolutely. Liberace, what a terrific performer. I know he's mocked by many people and stuff like that, but what showmanship couldn't you do with a bit of that glitz, glamour and stupidity, for want of a better word, in the world that we're living in today? You know, Liberace was one of those people, he knew exactly how to manipulate the audience. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but he knew what they wanted. I've met many people who worked with Liberace, you know, and they said to me that, you know, he was an astute businessman, very shrewd, could have been, you know, let's be honest, chums, an amazing classical pianist. I mean, he had obviously the talent, the power and all the credibility, but he knew that he liked, you know, the power of the audience and enjoying his performances. And the best bit, I think, was the fact that when he came to big venues like, you know, the London Palladium, he'd wheel in the Rolls Royce, you know. And I love the line, don't you, where he says, do you like it? You know, well, you should, you bought it. You just think, well, actually, that is true. He's not telling a lie there, is he? You know, you've paid all of this money to see Liberace, and of course, consequently, you have. I always think there must be a very good documentary on him, and not necessarily focusing on the negatives, you know what I'm saying? You know, just about the talent and how he got going, and, you know, because he had his brother George, didn't he, you know? Debbie Reynolds, who many people know that I knew very well, told me that she knew him incredibly well. And she said, you know, he really was devoted to his mum, obviously, as we all are. And the thing is, you know, she said she was the mastermind really behind the act, you know, the sort of thing of where it was going. And she said, on the other side of it was really that, you know, he sort of went from the direction of her. He said, and really, once she'd gone, he struggled to find that, sort of centric direction. And I think that's interesting because when you hire a big star like Liberace and you've made a lot of money and all that sort of stuff, you then really decide who can you trust. And Liberace's act went from in and out. And when you think about it today, the only people I would say that are on his level, for musicianship and showmanship, are people like Barry Manilow and, of course, the brilliant Neil Sedaka. You don't see many pianists, do you? We have a wonderful pianist over here, is a good friend of mine, actually, Bobby Crush. And Bobby Crush, won Opportunity Knocks, but he was a terrific performer and just knew how to connect to the audience. And he also had his own play, musical play, big success for Bobby Crush, actually, taking on Liberace. And he performed as Liberace on a TV show called, I think, Last Stand in Las Vegas or something. And again, he just wowed the crowd, so their legacies do live on, but a lovely, lovely memory. So thank you for that. Love Liberace. At Sherry Q Kendall, and this is 2621, I hope I've got that right, Sherry, you tell me, way back in the 70s, I went to see the Osmond brothers in concert and stayed at the same hotel as them. Ooh, lucky you. Was lucky enough to meet them at the hotel and went swimming with them. The next day, a friend and I followed their bus to another town. Naughty, naughty, Sherry. Yes, you crazy horse. Yeah, well, the Osmond brothers, what talents they were. Now, I can honestly say I'm good friends with all of the Osmond family, and they're just wonderfully talented group of people. Jimmy Osmond was a good friend of mine, and as many people know, sadly had that terrible health issue and is now really not back performing, but he's a lovely guy, and he told me some wonderful stories about starting out on the Andy Williams show, because people forget that, that's where they really started their time out. And I met Andy Williams as well. I know it sounds like, I've met, but I really have met these people, and I've interviewed them or became friends with them. The Osmonds are terrific though, because when I remember them, I think my first thing was watching them on TV, as a kid. And do you remember they wore like the white Elvis-y type suits, and then years later you get to work with them, and actually we were going to put a show on together, myself and Jimmy, where it was going to be touring the UK as a Q&A sort of thing, and we even found the theatre, which was just in Victoria, and we we're going to start it there. Everything was going really well, and then sadly, as you know, in Birmingham, the problem in the panto and stuff like that. So things sometimes don't necessarily work out, It's a shame, because I think Jimmy in concert, in an audience, in chat, would have been terrific fun. He is, and the rest of them, incredibly talented, but many people just remember like the sort of fun, sort of tracks, don't they? Like Crazy Horses. But I like Love Me for a Reason. What was your favourite Osmond song? Do share. You see, you still hear them, don't you, on the radio now? So I'm right that they're still popular. And more importantly, really, when you think about it, they don't make music like the Osmond brothers. Did they all get on? No, but neither, no brothers and sisters do they? Marie Osmond told me that, she said, look, we have moments where we get on with, moments when we fall out, but when it comes to showtime, we're all a unified sort of, production. And that's the way it should be. The audience really shouldn't know that not necessarily it's working out, Anna Hart 8344 tells me this. I got Bert Whedon, the guitarist, his, autograph, Bruce Forsyth, and Des O'Connor, the singer and comedian, all on Blackpool Pier one windy and wet holiday as a child. They were smaller than I expected, and I couldn't understand some of what they were saying. To be honest, chums, I've met all of those three. Sounds like I've been around forever, doesn't it? Bruce Forsyth, what a performer, could do everything. And he, of course, was our host of Strictly Come Dancing over here, so very well liked, did incredibly well. Des O'Connor, a lovely, lovely, absolutely adorable man. He was starring the last time I met him in Dreamboats and Petticoats, which was a big musical over here in London, put together by another good friend of mine, Bill Kenwright. And he'd never really done a musical for a long time, so he was a little bit nervous, and it was nice to see that vulnerability, you know what I mean? But Des O'Connor, when you think about it, was incredible, because he'd had a big hit, do you remember, with Pretend, and also, do you remember Dick-a-Dum-Dum? You do. I bet people around the world thinking, what, Neil, what? This was a hit record, you know. But Des O'Connor also was just great because he could do game shows, chat shows. What I loved about him on his chat show was he was very supportive to people that came on there, particularly if they were new to the business. You know, he really helped them and guided them, and that, you know, sort of went along with their act and stuff like that. Of course, he got into a lot of trouble with people like Stan Boardman. Yes, do you remember that one? Poor Stan got sort of booted off telly for many years, all thanks to that. So yeah, something's good, something's bad, as you can imagine. Fascinating stories though, but thank you for that. Blackpool piers, doesn't matter when you go on them, I've appeared on them, and I tell you what's frightening, you know, particularly if you're on the North Pier. I remember, gosh, you're sharing stuff now, aren't we, chums? But I remember being in the dressing rooms on the North Pier in Blackpool with the Crankies. I know, the Crankies, right? Fabulous act. And Victoria Wood, who'd been to see the Crankies. And we were all there. And anyway, when we were sort of walking down these stairs, you could see the gaps in the wood. And it was quite a bad, you know, sort of night, stormy-wise. And I felt very disconcerted. I mean, I can't swim, right, chum? So, you know, I was thinking, it's a long walk back from this pier. So I'm clutching hold of Jeanette Cranky and Victoria Wood, walking down the pier. And they didn't seem fazed by it at all. But lots of stars have told me that as the summer season went on in Blackpool, you know, the pier really did rev up and the planks would come up underneath, but they just carried on. I mean, they must be right because it's been up since 18 odd, hasn't it? So what am I mean, why am I worried? But you know what it's like? Those are the memories you have of being there, you know. And another time, gosh, no, I'll save that for another story. Yes, we must move on. At Lenora Collins tells me my first concert in the mid-80s was Huey Lewis and the News. We had backstage passes and got to meet the band. Luckily, my friend grew up with him, so we got great seats too. Now, that's a lovely memory, isn't it? You know, because they were a massive band. I remember them in the 80s. What was their song? That's The Power of Love. That was it, wasn't it? You know, great voice, Huey Lewis, didn't he? Real rock star look about him as well. And it's funny, isn't it, when you think, and I don't mean this rudely to Huey, but when he had that success, he would be quite old at that point, you know? And today, I'm not sure if we're that accepting of people having chart hits. Do you know what I mean? That you know, it's weird, isn't it, how it's moved on. I was watching an old episode of Top of the Pops recently. It had real mixed bag of people, and you think, yeah, that's the way it should be. Now everybody has to be young and hip and happening and social media. Huey Lewis, though, great vocalist, great, what a memory. So thank you for that, thank you. Now at Pamela Lipscomb 8332 tells me, Neil, the people I got to see were Beverly Sills, wonderful, in an opera, and Luciano Pavarotti in concert. They didn't really call anyone up on stage, although I did get to briefly meet Pavarotti. Wow, I mean, that's a memory in itself, isn't it? You know, my memory of Pavarotti, I don't mean that rudely, Pamela, but you know, you're just thinking of my memory. I'm sure many people's memories when Princess Diana went to see him in concert, do you remember? And the heavens opened. It was in Hyde Park, wasn't it? And she just sat there bravely with the rest of the crowd, you know, but still looked great, even in the wet, didn't she, you know? Pavarotti, what a performer though, you know? But what I liked about him, I saw a documentary about him. I met him very briefly myself, actually, in a recording studio. Larger than life character, but shy. Yeah, just, you know, a little bit sort of under the radar, as it were. But, you know, he was big and larger than life on the stage. And what a voice, let's be honest, right, chums? What an absolute mega voice this man had. What I liked about Pavarotti as well was the fact that I think he opened opera to the masses. You know, people suddenly were interested in him. And Nessun Dorma, his version, I think, is the definitive version. It depends on what era you're from, you know. I was lucky enough to meet, you know, the daughter of Mario Lanza, lovely lady. And, you know, of course, that generation, Mario Lanza was that, wasn't he? You know, he was that person. And I think that's the thing that you think, you know. And then, of course, we had Caruso. He was one of the first big opera stars, actually, to put his voice down on cylinder, what we now know as record, vinyl, digital, you know. But a lovely memory, that, Pamela. Thank you for sharing that. As I say, this is your show, chums. It's a chance to just share things. talk about things that you've done. So if you're enjoying it, please do like and share and comment, and we'll find some other topics if you enjoy this sort of format. I really enjoy that. I don't know about you. All I want now is a pot of tea. Yes, if we could have a global audience, we could all tap in, couldn't we, and hold the cups up together at the same time. I know, can you imagine? But, it's lovely to have that conversation and the memories, because it sparks things. And I often say this, I know, but for a moment you forget whatever ailments, twists and pains and turns and everything you've got. You think, oh yeah, that was good fun. Well done, Pam. Nora Cherry 248, at Nora Cherry 2438 told me that in the 1980s she won a radio competition, I can't pronounce this, Saskatoon, is that right? To meet Tom Jones. And she said she met him after the show. What a privilege. And that's an interesting thing, actually. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something you don't really hear about now, isn't it? Our generation, if you remember, radio was king, wasn't it? And when you think about it, there were opportunities to meet your stars, your celebrities, through radio competitions, because they did organise these things where you won the concert ticket and then you got to meet them backstage, and then they'd invite you on the radio. What was it like? All that sort of stuff. And you don't really see that anymore. I mean, over here in the United Kingdom, many people may remember this. We used to have the Radio 1 roadshows. They were terrific, and they were free. They were on the beach, which I know you can see I've come alive at the word free, but they were terrific fun, And the Radio 1 roadshows would have all the pop stars of the day that we loved and adored and all that sort of stuff, And what was interesting was, the radio DJs would be there, the big trucks. There was a sense of excitement, I think this generation miss out on that because they're either looking at the phones, tapping away, not looking at the world around them. We went there and literally were lucky enough to see the pop stars miming to their song. It didn't matter. It was free, it was sunny, it was summer, we weren't at school, life was good, right? Anybody else go to the Radio 1 roadshows? And who did you see? Maybe that's our next thread, or anywhere in the world. Did you go to these radio events and did you get to see somebody? And wasn't it a lot better when you weren't paying? Do you know what I mean, though? Because they give you out, do you remember those paper hats and badges and all sorts of stuff? The world was a lot more giving, I think, then in promotion. Now everything's behind a paywall. Am I right? Now here's a special one from a wonderful person, Cole53. They say to me, I remember seeing Helen Shapiro and the Beatles were her support act. I also love Cilla Black and went to her 10th anniversary fan club event at Tiffany's in London, followed by an evening at her sellout show at the London Palladium. Sadly, Keiko says they didn't get her fans on stage. Do you know, Keiko, I'm glad you mentioned this, because I interviewed Helen Shapiro and I asked her about that in the interview, like, what did she feel like, because it's quite a famous story, isn't it, about how she went on tour and she was the top of the bill. This is showbiz though, isn't it, top of the bill. And then as the tour and they got more famous, the Beatles, she progressed further and further down the bill. And I said, that must, because she's young, she's 15, 16 or whatever. And you think, how did that work? She said, you know what? I love the Beatles. I was a bigger fan as the next teenager and it didn't really bother me. And I believed her, actually. Ellen is a lovely, lovely, charming lady. Cilla Black, I met her too, number of occasions. In fact, I shared a dressing room with her at the old LWT buildings. It's not exactly the dressing room, but we're in the corridor together. And Cilla was one of these people, could be a bit diva-ish, absolutely, but she wanted, the shows to be good. She was very much a professional. And I liked all of her songs. Everybody remembers the big hits like, Anyone Who Had a Heart and You're My World. But I like things like Surround Yourself with Sorrow, Don't Answer Me, stuff like that. I thought she made some terrific songs, in her period. And many years later, after, working with her at LWT, I was at an event, a theatre event, and she turned up one night and we got chatting and she said, oh, thank you for remembering the music. That's really what I want to be remembered for. So she wasn't really, I don't mean bothered, I think she enjoyed the shows that she did, like Surprise, Surprise and Blind Date and stuff like that. But essentially, she was a performer and the performance was the thing that mattered to her, So it's fascinating, isn't it? Now, at Jackie Gould 5692, She has a terrific story. The biggest treat of my life, she says, Neil, was when Mr. Pastry came and did a show at a Christmas party. I love Mr. Pastry. I must have been around 1960. And I also went on stage at Panto in Oxford with Jimmy Edwards. Apparently they really wanted my older sister. Oh, probably not, sweetie. But Mr. Pastry, another person actually that's forgotten, you know. I saw some films of him recently on TV. A great acrobat. And also, we talk about marketing, right, chums? He knew how to market himself. He had everything, you know? I mean, the books, the dolls, every sort of thing going. But he was essentially an acrobat, wasn't he? But I thought he had a really good act, as it were. Jimmy Edwards, when you think about Jimmy Edwards, I didn't know him, but I believe my father knew him a bit. And he could be a little bit cantankerous, you know? But do you remember the guy with the big whiskers? He was kind of like, you know, had a big show, I think, in the early 60s called Wacko and stuff like that, played sort of headmasters and stuff. He was a great sort of person, you know, as a character. Again, I think these people work because you don't necessarily know too much about them behind the scenes. He was a very private man, you know, but very talented nonetheless. But Mr. Pastry, definitely a blast from the past, right? What a memory that is. Well, listen, I'll have to, you know, I could go on for hours. Let's just pause it there. So many of you kindly got in touch with your memories. So I hope that I've managed to share a few, you know, that you've enjoyed, and, you know, it gets the old memory box ticking. If you've enjoyed this sort of format and you'd like to have more chats, conversations, whatever you want to call it, chums, if you can't stomach it, don't mention it, please. No, we don't need to know the negatives. But the thing is, if you've enjoyed it on a serious note, thank you for your company. More importantly, thank you for your memories, because without your memories, we wouldn't have a show today. And it's been wonderful because you've got my mind thinking about, you know, various people that you've, you know, met and forgotten about and stuff like that. Des O'Connor, Bruce, Cilla, you know, I like Huey Lewis in the news, all that sort of stuff. And all of, you know, just some wonderful memories. And that's really the key, isn't it? It's keeping your brain going, keeping it alive, and more importantly, sharing the good times. Let's share more good times soon. And as ever, thank you so much for watching. If you can, please like and share. Neil Sean in the heart of a very sunny London.